Right. I wanted to invite Andrew on here today because me and him have had conversations. Like I met him in the gym personally, and we've had conversations back and forth just about different styles of stuff. There's like most of the conversations that we have is usually around like identity. He does something a little bit more unique or different, I suppose you could guess, from what we do. But it applies all the same in terms of like how he works, what he coaches people through, and how he kind of helps people through their own resistances and through their own internal blockages, I suppose you could say. So I wanted to bring him on today, not just to wipe the floor with a lot of yous, but just to kind of get some of yous out your own way and actually to get you to think differently so you can go away and make more money. So that's exactly why I wanted to invite Andrew on. He's going to run a couple of bits and bobs at the start, but feel free to chime in with any questions or any points that you want to bring up, and or any personal thoughts that you've got or insights that you want to share. Feel free to pop those in as we're going through it. It would be better if you could keep this as engaging as possible. So cameras on and then mics unmuted. So you're ready for it, not unmuted, but like when you have a question, please actually just unmute rather than put it in the chat as well, please. Yeah, easy,
Easy G.
Easy.
easy.
Okay.
Right, hello everybody. I'm only sat here because Kurt and I connected very randomly, very happenstance about 2 months ago or something like that in the gym. Turns out we both operate in pretty similar ways and help people in pretty similar ways as well. It's just that his is more direct for sales and mine is all tailored towards identity. Now, when most people hear that, you think, oh, personal development, woo-woo, it's a load of bullshit. But I am probably the most anti-woo-woo person that you will ever meet. I'm incredibly analytical. I'm very objective. And I'm very much a facts over feelings sort of person. Facts don't care about feelings, and that's the way that it works. A lot of my one-on-one clientele are managing directors or CEOs of large companies. I'm normally operating anywhere between multiple seven figures all the way up to nine figures. So I'm familiar with working with people that operate in a really, really high pressure situation job consistently. So what you guys do is kind of my wheelhouse. And I've been doing what I do for 22 years, which I know you probably are looking at me thinking, no, he's way too young to have been doing something for that long, but I am actually that old. I'm 40 years old. So, and what I do now is just the accumulation of all of the experience that I've gained through working with genuinely thousands upon thousands of people over the years in every different age range, gender, of the two genders that exist, of course. I'm collagen in bowls every morning. Yeah, that's it. I just bathe in it. Um, See, that's the kind of woo-woo bullshit that I absolutely fucking detest. All these like CEO morning routines, fucking ice bath for your face and cold plunges, showing your asshole to the sun for 20 minutes, meditating, all that bollocks. I don't do any of that shit. I wake up in the morning, I get dressed, and 10 minutes later, I'm sat here in my office, which is across from my bedroom, and I'm working because morning routine and all, there you go. Those kinds of morning routines, it's all bullshit. Nobody has ever become successful because they've got some elaborate morning routine. It's just doing the work. And the longer you can spend doing the work, the better you're going to get. Because that's actually a really simple principle that I teach to a lot of my clients who are coaches. So if anybody's a fitness coach or anything like that, people always want to know what's the difference between the most successful people and the unsuccessful people in the world. And pretty much the biggest difference is the fact that unsuccessful people will have an idea of what they want to do or what they want to achieve, and then they will spend months and months thinking about it, talking about it, watching podcasts and YouTube videos, reading books, planning for it, thinking about it, and just procrastinate for months and months and months before they do the first fucking thing. And then they finally take some action. The initial bit of feedback that they get is rejection. And then that paralyzes them, paralysis by analysis. That paralyzes them for another couple of months, more thinking, more reworking, more planning, but they're making plans based off no experience. So a plan with no experience to back it is bullshit. Whereas the most successful people, the distance between the thought of what they want and the first action is the same day. And they take action, get feedback, learn from it, and do that again. And then they get feedback, do it again, feedback, do it again, do it again. And they just repeat that process as quick as possible. And I can guarantee that that's the way that Kurt accelerated so quickly in the space of, what is it, mate? That 2.5, 3 years?
3 years.
And it's the kind of scaling and success that most people chase for 15, 20 years and most never even reach. So we've got two bits of proof that that works, me and him. But yeah, as far as the identity stuff, This will help you personally, but it's also applicable across all mediums. So anybody that you speak to, everybody you speak to is going to have multiple identities, right? So like Tola, the woman that you were talking about, it's giving you the usual. I'll do anything for my kids. They're the most important thing in the world. But how much of their behavior actually proves it? That's the kind of thing that matters because what you've got there is every single one of us that is here right now, we've got four primary identities. You've got your surface identity, which is the version of you that you present to the world. That is the version of you that you want to be thought of as. That's how you want to be perceived. If someone's going to talk about you, that's how you want them to talk about you in front of other people. And then right behind that, you've got your lived identity, which is the person that you actually are and the way that you actually live. So, like what I was saying about those bullshit CEO morning routines, I can guarantee that some of you have got people on your Instagram that do that kind of shit. They'll post themselves doing a cold plunge or doing whatever it is, and they'll state that that's what they do every single day. 5 a.m., get up every day, cold plunge, yada, 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 yada. That's who they present themselves as. But the lived version is the version of them that snoozes their alarm six fucking times before they eventually get up at maybe 7 a.m. And then they get up and instead of doing a cold plunge, like normal people, they have a nice hot shower. Because why would you not? And they start the day smelling like fucking mango or whatever body shower they use. And then they go downstairs and they make a cup of tea instead of having black coffee or an espresso or something. So the version that they present and the person who they actually are, for some people, the disparity between those two things is fucking enormous. And I can guarantee that there's going to be people in this room right now that do the same thing. If somebody asks you how things are going, you're going to represent what you're doing, the amount of money that you're making, how confident you are on calls, the way that a call has gone, the reason why it didn't go through, why you didn't manage to close. You're going to tell people one version of events that isn't true to what you actually lived and experienced. And the problem is that when people do that for long enough, you put yourself into a fucking delusional state where you actually start believing your own bullshit. And for people like you, somebody who's in sales, somebody who needs to close, that is absolutely the worst thing that you could possibly do to yourself because you end up creating this disparity between reality and your imagination, where in your imagination, you're perfect. You don't need to improve. There's no problem with your systems. There's no problem with your approach. There's no problem with your objection handling. There's no problem with your close. There's no problem with the way that you introduce a price. It's always the other person. I've dealt with that with salespeople time and time and time and time again. Kurt, I imagine that that is something that you're familiar with dealing with.
Very much so.
Now, with the self-doubt, what is that specific to?
It could be in a range of aspects of life. I say anything that I'm trying to develop a massive skill on. So that could be sport, it could have been closing, like one of those kind of things.
Right. So when you say self-doubt, is that when you first start and you doubt your ability to get very good at it?
Yeah,
To
probably
master,
that.
to master the skill essentially.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
And how much evidence have you got to support that you can't master the skill that you're focusing on?
Um, I think the evidence is there, but maybe my primary focus is on the evidence that shows that that could be true, possibly, from my understanding.
Right. So are you seeking evidence that proves that your self-doubt is correct or
Yeah,
proving that it's false?
that is correct.
Yeah. So that's the biggest fuck up.
Yeah.
Like if you self-doubt, if you have an insecurity, and why the fuck are you looking for excuses and why are you looking for something that is going to prove that it's true? You will find whatever you look for in life, whether it's internal or whether it's external. So if you have self-doubt, you need to do everything that you can to create the biggest pile of evidence that fear is wrong and that the possibility that you want to achieve is right. Because with any of my clients, if my client states something to me, and it doesn't matter whether it's a good or a bad thing, I only reply with prove it or show me the evidence. Because if you can't provide me with rock solid evidence that would stand up in court that that thing that you think or fear is true, then it isn't true in every respect. Because we all exist in the same world, right? Technically. But some of us exist in the objective world, and some of us exist in this imagined world. You spend too long in here. You're worrying, you're overthinking, you're talking yourself out of things, self-doubt, insecurities, etc. And it all starts to build and it all leads to self-sabotage. Now, your imagination is so acute that your brain doesn't know the difference between what you imagine and what has actually happened. That's why if any of you who have got family members who you're close with, friends who you're really, really close with, or partners, if you sat and you thought about them passing away and being gone and what life would be like, it wouldn't be very long until you were actually physically upset. Even though you know objectively, you sat there and you're like, this is all in my fucking head. It's an imagination. I'm thinking it up, but it still triggers a physical response. That's why controlling your mind is absolutely one of the most important things for you to focus on, top to bottom. Because eventually, what ends up happening is you've got your objective reality, which is actually happening. You've got your imagination, and this happens. And you end up with your imagination acting like a filter over your objective reality. So the way that you recall things, what happened on a call, your actual skill that you have, that you've already acquired, or how much skill there is left to acquire, you can't see your life as it actually is. You can't see yourself as you actually are. Because if you're looking for evidence that a self-doubt or an insecurity that you've got is real, the tiniest bit of evidence that supports that will feel enormous. And you would need an enormous, enormous pile of evidence to the contrary to actually go, oh, maybe I'm wrong. Because most self-doubt is attached to a fear. It could be a fear of not being good enough, it could be a traditional fear of failure, it could be anything, but that is normally linked to an emotion. I've lived my life genuinely since I was in my mid-teens by a philosophy. And it's if they died tonight, would it change my tomorrows? Right. So if my mum died tonight, like my tomorrows for as far into my future as I can see would be forever different. Because my mum is like the sun of my solar system. If I lost my kids, like my life would be irrevocably changed. It would never be the same ever. And anything that I had planned tomorrow wouldn't happen. But there's loads of people that I know that if they died tonight and I found out, tomorrow would happen unimpeded. It would be exactly the same. Even if it's somebody that I'm close with. Like Kurt and I, we've only been friends for a couple of months. But he's a fucking sound guy. I see him in the gym most days that I'm in there. We always stop and have a chin wag. Sometimes it's a 20-second hello. Other times it's a fucking 20-minute ruins the whole session sort of chat, but it is what it is. And I like him. And if I found out tonight that he died, I'd be sad. And when I go to the gym and I know he's not going to be there, I'd be like, that's really fucking shit. But I'd still train. I'd still have eaten before I went to the gym. I'd still eat afterwards. I'd still do my client calls. I'd still look after everybody that needed to be looked after, right? And that's somebody that I know. So if there's a stranger who you don't know what they look like, you don't know their name, you don't know anything about them, and they die tonight, their life stops. All of their opinions and potential judgments go with them. And you wouldn't know. So how fucking irrelevant is that person? If they could die and it not make a scrap of difference to your life, why do you give a shit about what they might think about something that you're doing? Like for me, 4 years ago, I lived in a two-bed apartment with my three kids. I now live in a five-bed, five-bathroom detached stone house. Kurt's seen it. It's a lovely house, isn't it? Do you think I give a fuck about anybody's opinion? In my process of going from there to where I am now and where I'm going to go from where I am now over the next 4 years. Like, imagine me turning to my kids, still living in that little two-bed apartment, and saying to them, boys, I know you're now 18 and 14. I'm sorry that you're still sharing a fucking small bedroom. Talking to my 12-year-old daughter saying, baby, I'm sorry that you still share a bedroom with me and Beth. But some people on the internet, they might have thought like that things that I were doing were cringy, or they might have thought that I was stupid. So I've just sacrificed your whole fucking comfort for them. Like, is it just me that thinks that's fucking retarded?
But it is.
When I was talking about identity, you've got your surface identity, who you present yourself as, and then your lived version. Like I guarantee, I promise you faithfully, you will meet people at different points in your life. You'll go away on, if Kurt does like masterminds and things like that, and you end up in Marbella, you end up around rich people. You might meet someone who's got a watch that costs 300 grand on the wrist. But I guarantee if you go into their house, the little bit on the toilet that's behind the seat, yeah, there'll be piss on it. There'll be dust on the top of the fucking cistern. There'll be dirt behind the toilet. There'll be mess here, there, and everywhere. Open their cutlery drawer, and I guarantee that there'll be little bits in the different sections or underneath the tray. And you're probably thinking, why the fuck's he talking about there being bits of food and stuff in a fucking cutlery tray in somebody else's house? This is how when I said at the start of the call, I'm very analytical. This is what I mean. If somebody comes to me for me to improve their life, I'm improving your life from top to bottom and side to side. Not a single thing gets left. Not a single thing. Because the closer you actually get to the version of you that you present yourself as, because that is who you actually want to be, the gap between who you say you are and who you actually are, when that gap gets smaller and smaller and smaller, that gap is where all of your insecurities, all your self-doubt, all of your nervousness, all of everything that you experience that is shit, all of your pain in your life exists in that gap. And everything that you can do that closes it bit by bit by bit, when it doesn't have anywhere to exist, it's gone. And then eventually you've got your lived identity, and your surface identity is like a layer of fucking paint on the top of it because there's no difference. You are actually who you say you are. You're as consistent as you say you are. You're as focused and as disciplined as you say you are. Yeah.
So how analytical would you get?
So with that, the way that I approach things like that, I never tell people what they need to do just directly because people don't learn that way. I mean, I'm sure I'm in a room full of salesmen here, so I'm sure you've all heard the term telling isn't selling. Because if you tell the person that you're speaking to what they want, what they need, it just goes in one ear and out the other. At that time, you need to start asking them questions so that they can give you the answer. Because you need to find out you're presenting yourself as this all singing, all dancing entrepreneur, but you don't live that life. You don't have the success that would come from living that way for that period of time. You know it and they know it, but you've got to find a way so that you can ask the right questions to lead them so that they tell you that. You need to figure out what the disparity is between the life that they live and the life that they want. Because essentially that is what what you said is exactly right. They're showing you their surface identity, and the lived identity just shows that behaviorally it's not true. Because like I just said a couple of minutes ago, what exists in the gap between the surface identity and the lived identity? What lives in that space? What did I say? Let's see who was listening.
Insecurities,
Series.
fear, nervousness.
Doubt.
Bingo. So you've got to find out how big is that space and how much of all of that shit exists in there. And what can you say to them to make it so that those issues that still exist aren't going to get in the way of you closing them at the end of the call? Because is that something that you experience? Have you got experience of people that are like that, then not closing?
No, I had a call with some girl today, and she'd been through some hardship, and obviously she's overcome that, and then now she's in this mind frame of obviously she's an entrepreneur and she's a go-getter. She likes to do X, Y, Z, and she's built her own business from being homeless and stuff. And I was like, okay, cool. So she had this like go-getter mentality in terms of putting herself out there, but she was only at like I think 4K per month, and she wanted to start her own online business for a while. I think like 2 years. So aside from that hardship, which she took the responsibility on for because she was doing drugs and all sorts beforehand, she still wasn't there yet. So when it got to the end, the objection was like doing it by herself. But she'd labeled herself as an entrepreneur earlier on. So I kind of, in the objection handling, I went down the route of obviously, okay, like what would the entrepreneur do, right? The future version of you who's making 50K, blah, blah, blah. Like to put yourself in the best position as fast as possible, which she said she wanted to.
Mhm.
What would she do? But then she fell back on, because she told me earlier on that in the past, she'd always just tried to do things by herself. And she didn't really want to do that anymore. She wanted like help. But then she fell back into her old self later on after saying that I'm an entrepreneur, all this.
Yeah. So with that, that is her fear speaking for her. That is her subconscious mind telling her that it's probably a trust issue. She doesn't know whether she can trust the person that's supposed to help her. B, it's just the fear of what if it doesn't work? You might find that with somebody like that, the reality is her self-doubt is in her ability to actually make it work. If she fails in isolation, there's less shame, there's less guilt, there's less embarrassment. Whereas if she actually works with someone who is there purposely with the intent of helping her become successful, and then her work ethic gets exposed, her intelligence, her willingness to change and learn all gets exposed. And that's the real reason why she's not succeeding in the way that she wants to. She can't handle that.
Hmm.
Because if she's gone from being homeless and a drug addict, etc., and she's now got her own business and she's doing 4K a month, sure, 4K a month isn't a lot of money, but it's a fucking hell of a lot more than being homeless and being addicted to drugs. So she's got what is a great story and she's got a great level of success in her life so far. But she's hit that ceiling. Her identity will be telling her that where she is right now is the safest that she's ever been, and she doesn't want to do anything that would jeopardize it. So to her, the potential pain of investing money and losing the money is more painful to her than it taking the same amount of time that it's already taken for her to get from 0 to 4 to get to, I don't know, 6 or 7. Because that's when you listen to someone's story, you need to learn how to ask questions that are going to tell you things that they normally wouldn't want to tell you. Because so for me, if I was on a call with someone and they were saying I'm an entrepreneur, etc., and I really want to scale, I want to be massively successful, but then at the end they try to retreat and put up the flag of I want to miss independent, I want to do it on my own. I would say, is that pride or fear? Just a very simple question. Is that pride or fear? Do you want the pride of having your story being, I'm self-made, I did it entirely on my own, etc.? Because in her head, she might be fantasizing about being on podcasts in fucking 5 years' time with people going, oh my God, you're amazing. You've got to fuck it. Because that's what people do. This is what I'm talking about. Objective reality. She's fucking stuck. She's maxed out what she knows how to do. The applicability of her knowledge has expired. Her imagination, though, is telling her she's completely competent. She's got the ability, the skill, etc., to go from where she is to the moon.
Mm.
So this has happened.
She said that at the end. She's like, no, do you know what? Like, I just know I can do it by myself. Like, I know I can do it. Do you get it? So
Mm.
she definitely, yeah, she said that.
What sort of entrepreneurs is she inspired by? Who does she look up to or learn from?
I didn't get into that, I didn't ask, to be honest.
Because anybody tells me that they're an entrepreneur, most of the time they're not. I'm really big on linguistics. So, like, definitions and distinctions of words are incredibly, incredibly important. As soon as somebody tells me they're an entrepreneur, I just say, define an entrepreneur for me.
Perfect. There you go.
What does that word mean to you? And they normally go, because what all it is what are you? I'm a small business owner. And they think that there's some shame in that. So they go, what sounds better? I'm an entrepreneur. And then they put fucking CEO in the bio on Instagram. You're like, what the fuck are you a CEO of, mate? Do you have a board of directors? Do you have any employees? No, then you're not a fucking CEO, are you? You're a sole trader, right? That's the sort of shit that you need to expose because you'd be like, let them be happy with the position that they're actually in. You don't need to present yourself as an entrepreneur to be respected. Like, what are you? I'm a fucking hardworking small business owner. I've gone from zero and homeless to being 4K, growing a business with the actual mentality that's required for growth, right? Any one of you in here right now, I imagine the vast majority of you are intelligent, you're competent, you can learn, and then you can apply, right? So why are you all here? Because you're all smart enough to know that you don't know everything. So you can learn from somebody else that helps you to accelerate. It's as simple as that. So if you ask them, who are you inspired by in business? Which entrepreneurs do you follow? And they say, oh, Layla Hormozy, Alex Hormozy, this person, that person, the other person. Say, have any of those, when you listen to podcasts and they tell you about their backstory and where they came from and the hardships and things like that, and they'll be like, yeah, yeah. Like, did any of the people that you've just listed, have any of them ever had mentors and people that have like shown them the ropes at different levels? Because there's not a single entrepreneur who's genuinely successful on earth who hasn't had a mentor. And she would have to go, yes. I'm like, right. Are you more knowledgeable than Alex and Layla Hormozy and Grant Cardone and Andy Frisella and all of these other people? Because it's a yes or a no. If you say yes, then they're a fucking moron. If they say no, they're finally being honest. And you go, right, so you're not smarter than some of the biggest entrepreneurs globally right now. No. Okay, so why do you think that you don't need to do the things that they had to do? And they state clearly, openly, honestly, I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in if it wasn't for this mentor, this mentor, this mentor. Like, back them into a corner with the questions. Like I said, ask them questions, they give you the answer, and it puts them in a position where they don't have anywhere to go.
Yeah,
You're
right.
highlighting, you're highlighting the ignorance, and then you use intellectual empathy. So you can say, listen, I get it. I understand that you might have a fear. You might be scared of what could happen. Like, am I right at all in that? Is there an element of fear that you might invest money in a mentor and you might not make it back, or you just might not be as successful as you want to be overall? More often than not, they're going to say yes. You go, right, I get that. I've been there myself. Do you know how I overcame that fear for myself? How? I invested in a mentor. I did the things that felt the most uncomfortable. I faced the fear. And then you very quickly work beyond it. And you'll go from 4 to 8K to 10K to 15K to 20K. And the thing is, your first mentor might know enough to get you to 10K months. And if you stagnate at that point for an extended period of time, it doesn't mean that you can't get any better. It means that your mentor doesn't know enough to be able to take you beyond that point. And then you go to somebody else. And then they might be able to take you to 50K months. And then they'll stagnate. And then you go to somebody else who can take you to 250 and so on and so on and so on. That's it. It's if you ask the right questions, you get everything from them. Every time somebody presents their self to me and they tell me who they are, the only thing that I care about at that point is finding out who they actually are.
Mm.
And the thing is that you were getting closer to it, which is why she took such a defensive stance. Because when I said at the start of the call, we've all got 4 identities. You've got surface level identity, lived identity, defense identity. It's the third layer. Now, if you start getting through their surface level identity and they start feeling exposed, which you said that you did, the cracks started to show in the bullshit that she was presenting. When their lived identity starts to feel exposed, their defensive identity wraps around it. And the defensive identity is irrational because it's all based in fear. For all of us, when any of us feel scared, fearful, we become irrational. We make illogical decisions. We think irrationally. And she just suddenly went from, right, I've done well so far and I'm making good money, but I want to make loads more money. So I'm going to get on this call with Enoch to find out about something that could completely change my life. That was her mentality going in before the call started. And then the call started and she presented the surface level identity because she cares massively about what people think about her. She's vulnerable to external validation. You started to ask her questions. You let her present herself. You validated her by saying, yeah, that's fucking sick. Like, well done. Brilliant. That version of you. That's brilliant. So then she had something to defend. And then when you started asking questions that were poking and it was getting uncomfortable, she became irrational and was like, yeah, you know what? I'm confident enough that I can do it all on my own. So you've got a complete 180.
Mm.
Once that defensive identity has been triggered, asking those specific questions, being very logical, is the only way to get beyond it. Because I've got a quote that I use with my clients quite a lot, and it's when emotion is the poison, logic is the antidote. Because getting them to be logical over and over and over and over again by asking them questions and getting an answer is the only way to make the limbic system, which is the emotional center of the brain, to sit down and shut the fuck up so that your neocortex, which is the intellectual part of your brain, can come back into the room. And then the last identity is your core identity. And that is the bit of you that holds everything that you've experienced from being a little boy or girl all the way up to now. That is the most real version of you. And the work that I do with my clients is all focused on that, the core identity, because that's where your belief systems come from, your core values. Take care, Matt. Your core values come from there, whether you need external validation, your vulnerabilities, your insecurities, all of it comes from that core identity. And that's the one part of us that most people never actually challenge.
Can I tell you something interesting in terms of the way I sort of sell? So, for example, if you have an individual that wants independence, if you have an individual that wants to be a provider, if you have somebody that wants to be an entrepreneur, there's usually certain characteristics or like mental models that somebody would have to have if that's who they want to be, right? If they align with that identity, then they would usually have the similar characteristics to what they perceive themselves as. So if you take like an entrepreneur, right? So it's somebody that takes high level risks, embraces risks, is decisive and encourages overcoming like their own fears and stuff.
Mhm.
So if somebody tells me they want to be an entrepreneur or they want to be independent, right? Well, what define it, right? In your own mind, define you being an entrepreneur. Or what does that mean to you? Because then what they'll do is they'll label certain characteristics, and if that's how they perceive themselves as, then when it comes to objection handling, they're trying to separate themselves from the previous identity, then I just kind of realign them with the same characteristics that they defined earlier in the conversation. You do it quite differently, where I get them to purposely speak out those characteristics out loud so that they can fall into that person.
Yeah. So what you do is identity escalation. So you put them in a position where they've presented one identity, and then later in the call, when it's getting a little bit closer to having to start paying some money and the pressure starts to increase, they
Yeah,
then start to recede back to their real identity and they
yeah,
start to defend themselves. Identity escalation is like, so I'll give you an example of it, one that I've used with one of my clients. He's being a bit of a shitbag and he was trying to get out of the coaching, right? And I replied to him. I made him wait for a while, and then I replied to him and I just sent him a message and it just said, "You've really surprised me, mate." That was the first message. Because I know for a fact that he will have got that message and he'll have been like, I've surprised him. That fucking starts peacocking, thinking that I'm going to say something that he wants to hear. And I said, when we first started, you presented yourself as, and give him a quick breakdown. I was like, and that's who I thought you were. I thought you were someone who could go through difficult times. I thought pressure was going to be a privilege to you. I thought you'd be the sort of person that the pressure that I was going to apply would turn you into a fucking diamond. I thought you were going to prove yourself to be the person that you said that you were. And then you've made this decision. Was I wrong about you? Question mark. That was it. And he didn't reply for hours. And then when he came back, no, you weren't wrong. I just had a moment of weakness. Ignore what I said before. Because essentially what I did was I was like, right, okay, you want to do this? Here are your options. Be the person that you said you were, continue doing the work and eventually get to it, or be the bitch that you're acting like right now. Because if you escalate someone's identity, whichever one they choose, that's who they actually are. And that's what Kurt does with doing that. He carries on essentially boxing them into the identity that they've presented themselves as.
that was a class response, though.
With me, what I've done with people before is when they state what it is that they want, one of my favorite questions to ask that completely puts you in the driver's seat. Like if you want to command authority early on in a call, this is the question to ask because it fucking blows their surface identity into the fucking stratosphere. As soon as they've stated what they want, who they are, da 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 da, and this is what I want. I want to be doing 100K months. I want this. I want that. Da, da, da. Do you deserve it? It's such a powerful question for people who have any self-doubt going on. Do you actually deserve that life? Because then they immediately, if they do, somebody asked me that question about the life that I'm working towards. If somebody went, "Do you think you deserve that life?" I would fucking roast them. There wouldn't be a second's hesitation. Somebody said to me, "Do you actually think that you deserve that life?" I'd be like, "You have no fucking idea who you're talking to, dear." Like to even ask me that question proves that you don't. But what most people do is they get defensive. And if they get defensive, that'll very quickly crumble. And then ask a couple more questions, take them into it. Do you actually deserve that? Well, yeah. Why? How do you know that you deserve it? Because I've done that with people where I've essentially broken them down and I've led them down a path by asking them questions where they've then told me that they actually don't think that they deserve it, which is exactly what I wanted because that was the truth. They didn't actually think that they deserved it. Because if you're lying, if you're saying, "Yeah, I deserve it," but deep down you think that you don't, or you know that you don't, then you're never going to get there. So I like doing that. I break them down until they get to the point where they say, "No, I don't deserve it." And then I disagree with them and then build them back up.
Now, I don't like to externalize things. I don't like saying, "Oh, I had a, quite a terrible upbringing, growing up in a single parent household."
You
But
don't like to, but you're still emotionally bonded to those excuses.
yeah, that's something I feel like in turn, because that's why everyone's saying on social media. It's like, "Oh, it's okay to feel this way because you grew up in a certain way." So I guess that's just what my mind's come to.
Yeah, because that's your comfort. That's the excuse. It's the justification for the behavior.
Yeah.
You immediately said habits. Habits aren't real. There's no such thing as a habit. It's just choices. We make good and bad choices. It's as simple as that. Like you speak to someone who is an addict, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's porn, whether it's gambling, anything. Speak to somebody who's big and fat. Habits. Oh, I've just got bad habits. I've just got bad habits. I've got bad eating habits. I've got this. It's a bad habit. All right, cool. Find me a successful person who you go, "Fucking hell, mate. You make millions a year. How did you do that?" And you go, "It's just good habits." Nobody ever puts the great things down to good habits. Nobody with an amazing physique says, "Oh, I've just got good habits." Nobody who makes millions says, I've just got good habits. No Olympic athlete says, oh, I'm the best in the world at what I do because I've just got good habits. I've just got better habits than everybody else. No, it's bullshit. It's just choices. It's just that some people, when they're faced with the difficulty of the choice, go, I don't give a fuck how difficult it is because the difficulty isn't the point. The end goal is. You just need to accept that the addictions that you've got, you choose to hold on to them. Maybe it's a safety blanket, maybe it's something that it's it's just what you know. You're comfortable with it. Imagine a glass orb, right? It's just floating in a space, however that looks in your mind. Glass orb, and it's got glowing light in it. That is the identity that you have. When you start to transition, because you've made decisions, you've made choices, you're learning new information, right? And you've made a commitment that you're going to become a better person. Another glass orb will form and it's empty. And then the light from your original identity starts to bleed across to it. And eventually it makes contact, but it doesn't just start to pour into that orb. Once it's made contact, the rest of the light from this orb, other than the last strand, bleeds into the middle. It's a space that I refer to as identity purgatory because you are shapeless. You are without form in that space. And the vast, vast majority of you exists in that space. And it's uncomfortable because it's all unfamiliar. All of the previous decisions that you make consistently, your behavioral patterns, the way that you live your life. You don't have any of that in this space. And what most people do is they either get stuck in purgatory and just bumble through life and never amount to fucking anything, or it gets really, really uncomfortable and they return back to their old identity because it's familiar. And that's the kind of thing that I've seen for years and years and years with hundreds of people that I've worked with eating disorders, with alcohol problems, with drug addiction, all sorts. They will reach a peak of discomfort and then they will retreat back to their old identity. A small percentage of people will have the conviction to go, fuck this. They will cleave off the connection to their old identity, and parts of them are still in it. That's the people that you need to cut off. Whether it's a parent, whether it's another family member, whether it's a best friend, whether it's a partner, they just cut it off, they get rid. It doesn't matter whether it's the town that you grew up in that you leave or the entire country that you live in. You have to transition completely. Your mentality, your thoughts, your feelings, your identity, the actions that you take every day, the decisions that you take, all of it needs to evolve in order for all of you that exist in purgatory to transition into your new identity. Right now, you haven't made that commitment.
I wanted to ask, right? One of the things that I've been guilty of recently is like people pleasing in a way of saying that I'm not really saying to people on calls what I genuinely think because I'm attached to the outcome of the call. And I wanted to know like how to break that because it's something that's holding me back really.
Is this an issue that other people on the call will deal with as well? Any of you title yourself as a people pleaser?
Yeah, I definitely do.
Right.
What
One
did,
thing that
I
what
don't.
did, what did Andrew just say about the truth? Yeah, everybody just
oh,
seems to divide the truth in that one question.
recovering people pleaser. There's no such thing as a people pleaser. That's
I
just
don't title myself as it. It's just I noticed that I'm doing it
you,
at
no,
points. Like I don't see myself as it.
you do, Matthew, because you just did
Okay,
it. You don't
fair.
want to because you know it's not a respectable thing to be, but you do. The thing is that you want to change it, so it doesn't fucking matter, right? But
Facts.
being a people pleaser has got fuck all to do with pleasing other people. Like, how many people pleasers do you know everybody's happy with them? Aren't we all to an extent? No, Oscar, we're not. Like me, I will give everybody the fucking truth. Bottom line. And if you don't like it, I've only given you the truth. If somebody chooses to be offended, that's not my fucking problem, is it?
Yeah.
So if you're a people pleaser, it's because you're trying to protect yourself. You're trying to protect your identity. You want people to think of you and look at you in a certain way. Must be a German inside of you somewhere. Look at my last name, Keeler. But that's it. You're trying to protect yourself from their judgment of what you're like. Because earlier in the call, I said you are vulnerable if you are if you are subject to external validation. If you care about what other people think of you, that is going to dictate a huge portion of your life. It will prevent you from living the life that you could and probably want to live. Because what other people think of you is important. That's where people pleasing comes from. Because I can tell them the truth, but I think that they won't like me if I tell them the truth, so I'm not going to. That's that coward side of being a liar that comes out. Because how old are you now?
24.
Right. You need to grow up. You need to accept that in life, lots of people won't like you. And the thing is that when you're a people pleaser and you try to chameleon in every situation that you're in so that the people that are in it with you will like you lose track of who you are. Anytime I think about this, anybody here watched the Flash series?
Yes.
Carly, I can see you smiling. So, good man. Right. Do you remember the episode when that guy who could shapeshift and he could look like anybody?
Yeah.
And at the end, when they've caught him and they put him in the cell where his powers won't work, he doesn't have a face anymore because he can't remember what he looks like. He spent so long trying to shapeshift and be other people. That's what happens to us. You end up with this mishmash identity. You lose track of yourself because you're trying to be this person for that group of people. You're trying to be this person for those people. You're trying to be a different sort of person for your parents. Like, imagine if all of the different groups, social groups that exist in your life, old school friends, new people, people that are on this call, your parents, extended family members, imagine they were all in the same place at the same time.
Yeah, yes.
Which version of yourself would you be? A lot of you would be fucking sick to your stomach with nerves because you'd be like, oh shit, I'm going to be so exposed. Thing is, get comfortable being who you are. If there's something that you want to say to somebody on a call, learn how to say it. Earlier in the call, when I said I've got an obsession with linguistics, it's all because it's part of the emotional profile of communication. You can say anything to anyone. You just need to understand how to say it. And at the end of the day, there are always going to be situations where you say exactly the right thing and it still doesn't go the way that you want it to. That doesn't mean that you lied just to get a sale. I'm not going to go into ethical selling and just be like, never tell a lie to someone and never push them and never try to coerce them into a sale because you're all in sales. You're going to fucking do it. You're all doing it now. You're all going to carry on, even if I told you to stop. It is what it is, right? But this isn't about a sale. This isn't about how they interpret you. This is about how you interpret you. This is about how you feel about you. And when you start to look at the way that you actually conceptualize money and the people with it and the people without it, you start to realize that a lot of it's wrong. And that's when you come to another level of your identity where you need to start looking at your parents and going, I know they love me and I know they wanted to teach me right from wrong, but they're wrong. You need to take your parents down off the pedestal that you've put them on. You need to be like, no, it's okay that they're wrong. Me rejecting their belief for money doesn't mean that I don't love them.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
and you can live in conflict your whole life. But I know people who I had a client, right? He came to me and his business went from 0 to 5K months in 4 months. And I was like, this guy's going to the fucking moon. No, he hit 5K and like that it stopped. And December he did 5K. January, February, March, April, he was like that, ebbing and flowing, either side of the line. 5.2, 4.5, 5, 4.3, 4.2, 5, 5.1. Just it was just considered that was it. It was the ceiling. Started to investigate his financial identity because it was nothing to do with the business. It was nothing that you could put down on paper. His onboarding was perfect. The service was really high quality. The results that he was getting was great. His content for social media was absolutely on point. Started to investigate his financial identity, and his dad told him constantly when he was little, nobody needs to earn more than 60 grand a year. And if they do, they're selfish, they're obnoxious, they're greedy, they just want to take what other people could have. So 5K a month is 60 a year, right? So as soon as he hit that limit, he was like, if I go beyond this, I am all of these awful things that my dad always told me I was. And his dad only told him that because that was as much as his dad could earn in his career. That was his dad's ceiling, and he imposed it upon my client. So throughout April, we worked on his financial identity. And in May, he did 10,200. And in June, he did 12 and a half. And then he did 15.6, then 17.8. And he continued going until he got to 28,000, I think was his peak month before the end of the year. So he spent
Nice.
5 months stagnant because his beliefs and his financial identity dictated it, even though everything else that he was doing was fine, but he was self-sabotaging. Because as soon as he hit the threshold, his responses to his clients slowed down. He wasn't as attentive on consultation calls. he was getting a lot of people saying no. Whereas when he was in a position of need and he was at 4,000, every call, yes, 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 sign up, sign up, sign up, sign up. As soon as he'd hit his ceiling and his mental threshold, it was no, it was I'll think about it, it was I need to ask my husband, all the usual shitty objections. And because of the mind state that he was in, he didn't challenge it. So that's where this was coming from.
Interesting. So he was not even like doing the effort because in his mindset was like, I'm good. Like I don't need more.
In his mind, when he got to the point where if he took on more clients, he'd have been earning 5.5, 6K a month, he then had to reduce that because as soon as he went over, he felt like a bad person.
So, how do I detach from the outcome when this game of sales, it's performance based and it's down to my identity, not well, my own performance?
You don't need to detach from the outcome of the call. You need to detach the emotion from it because every call that you do is feedback, right? And you will learn infinitely more about sales from a failed call than you will from a successful call. You can watch back a close and you can be like, oh, I did that right, I did that right. But a lot of what you did right will be blind to you because when something feels right, it just feels right. It's like when your heart is healthy because you can't feel it. Like right now, for all of us, your heart is beating in your chest and you can't feel it, can you?
No.
That's because all of the chambers of your heart are firing in the order that they should be. When you can feel your heart, there's something that's not quite right. If you can constantly feel your heart, go to a doctor. So when your call goes well and everything is done right, you're gonna watch the call and you'll be like, yeah, it was a good call. But when you watch a call that you didn't close, you're gonna be able to pick each of the things that you did wrong. You'll see a missed opportunity, you'll see a hesitation, you'll see a lack of conviction in the way that you speak, you'll see a missed opportunity to just shut the fuck up and let them think. Because when you've failed on a call, that sort of thing should be like a glowing red sign for you. But the pressure that you've got in your life, where's it coming from?
Finances, a lot of shit to pay for this year. Obviously, now not having a job. So this is main source of income.
So are you worrying that the money that you need, you're not going to earn?
But well, this is the thing, right? Because sales is challenging that belief that I have in
You
my
know,
that
yes or no.
yeah.
Right, there you go. See, even things like that when you're on a call with someone, stop them going into a narrative. Stop them creating the story, which is them convincing themselves that what is real isn't real. Just binary, logical, analytical, yes or no. Your main worry is that the money that you need, you're not going to earn, right?
Mm.
If that is the way that you think, that is what you're going to move yourself towards. I promise you faithfully. Think about a little kid learning how to ride a bike. You take the support wheels off and you've got them in a big car park with one light in the middle, one lamppost. And you go, don't crash into the lamppost. And he pedals off and goes right into the lamppost and fucking falls off his bike. And he's done that because he's scared of the lamppost. As soon as you let go of his seat, he goes, don't crash into the lamppost. Don't crash into the lamppost. Don't crash into the lamppost. He's looking at it and he's focusing on it. And his body just steers him towards it. And he goes, bink, falls off. And his fear is realized. If you hadn't mentioned it, you probably wouldn't have thought about it. You wouldn't have steered into it. For you right now, you're thinking, what if I don't make the money? What if this call doesn't close? What if I end up and all of the negatives, all of the horrible eventualities that would befall your life if it doesn't work and you don't make the money, you think about those. That's what goes through your mind. That's what prevents you from getting to sleep at night. That's what makes you act differently on a call. Think about the opposite. Like, what am I going to do if every single call that I get on I close and I make more commission than I know what to fucking do with? What am I going to do if every single call, regardless of how difficult it is, I find the solution for each person that I speak to and every single one of them closes? Start worrying about the amount of tax that you end up paying instead of worrying about not being able to pay your bills. And that is just a choice because it's what goes on in your head. You control that. People, and I have so many people over the years tell me that they can't control it. I can't stop thinking about it. Yes, you can. You choose to continue thinking about it. I don't. And I always say the same thing to them. How often do you think about your mum and dad having sex? And they'll be like, never. I'm like, why not? Because I don't want to. So you can control what you think about that. You don't think about that because you don't want to. Ergo, you choose what you think about. So if you're thinking about these negatives and this catastrophized life where you end up fucking homeless or whatever, you're choosing to think about it. Choose to think about something different. A legal analogy. It is horrific, but it works. It gets the fucking point across. Away from that, one of my only fears is getting to the end of my life with a laundry list of what ifs. What if I'd worked harder? What if I'd taken that risk? What if I'd done that? What if I'd spoken to that girl? What if, what if, what if, what if? Fuck that. I can't think of anything fucking worse because the thing is that that reality would open up once you reach the point where there's nothing you can do about it. And right now, everybody in this room is living a reality where you can do a lot about any of the what ifs that you've got in your mind. What if I lock in and I actually do what I'm capable of? What if I actually push myself hard enough to find out what my threshold actually is? What if? Because the thing is that it only takes one or two incidences for you to recalibrate what you think you're capable of. Like, give me someone who is really, really unfit and they believe their limitations are enormous. And I would take them out and I would go, how far do you think we can walk before you need to stop? And they might be like, to the end of the street. Like, right, cool. We're going to find out how far you actually can walk. And when they get to the point where their mental limitation kicks in and they get to the end of the street and they want to stop because they've convinced themselves that's all they can do, I will push them and bully them into continuing. And then when they've walked a mile or 2 miles, which is infinitely longer than what they've thought that they could, it's now impossible for them to believe that they can only walk to the end of the street because I've just proved that that's wrong. And that limitation is now gone. Because if they maintain it, they have to live in cognitive dissonance where they choose to believe something that they know to be false. And you can do that with anything. Like there is no call that you're going to get on with any prospective client that you're going to die on. No rejection is so painful that it means that you have to stop doing what you do. No objection is so difficult that it can't be overcome. So a lot of the things that you're scared of, it's absolutely pointless being scared of it.